Clear faces, so I'm really excited to be here to talk a little bit about what's going on in Londonderry, but more importantly to answer your questions. So the reason that we're doing these, and this is the second, I thought the first went really well. We did it up at the senior center, but we're trying to reach different groups, and obviously everybody who's available at 2 o'clock in the afternoon isn't necessarily available in the evening, and vice versa. So this is the second of many, but a lot of the opportunity that we have to interact with the public occurs at town council meetings in public comment, and that's important and it has a role, but at the same time it's really not that conducive for in-depth conversations and the back and forth, just by its nature. And so that's why these events are really important. A little bit about what's happening in town right now. I'm happy to report that we're making significant progress on our water infrastructure improvements. Water infrastructure is something obviously that we have a bit of a challenge here in Londonderry with. We are probably the most unaddressed area of contamination in the state, and that's primarily due to the PFAS coming out of the St. Cobain plant. And through a lot of cooperation with the state and federal partners, we've been able to recently secure an $8 million grant to leverage some money that was approved by the voters, overwhelmingly by the voters, this past March. That was a warrant article that passed 64% of the voters who came out, and it approved really the money that was necessary to access that $8 million grant. So we're getting started on that work. That'll be continuing here as we go forward for many years, I expect. None of this will be resolved overnight, but that's one of the most important issues going on in Londonderry. One of the other issues that everybody is concerned about and always interested in hearing about is taxes in the budget. And I'm happy to report that we closed the fiscal year on June 30th. And we came in under budget with a reasonably healthy surplus. The numbers are still being worked out, but it is money that will be available to go back to the taxpayers to offset the tax rate, which historically has happened, at least in the recent past, or to fund some of those infrastructure projects that happen each year on the ballot. So it's I think the best time of year to be here in Londonderry. We're coming into just some great events that are happening. Old Home Day, this is the 125th edition, if you will. We're really trying to up our game in multiple different ways, adding new events, including a color run, where you have the opportunity to get a little bit messy and get some bright colors on you, and I think that the kids will like that, and adults hopefully as well. The concerts on the Common just couldn't be going any better. We had 700 people on the Common last week. This is every Wednesday through Old Home Day, and there's some really quality acts that have been booked. That's an initiative of the Londonderry Arts Council. The Arts Council is supported every year by the taxpayers through the budget. So they access grant money as well to be able to provide that program. So I think a couple of other things I mentioned. We just, and really in response to kind of, frankly, it was a Facebook post that said, hey, why is the Funway Playground in the state that it's in? It really drew some positive attention to what is really a nice community resource at the Laffa Fields, enjoyed by families, in the nice weather, and through a outpouring of community involvement, community volunteers. We had an anonymous donor, and we got some money through the town council, which was very supportive of reinvigorating that community resource. It just couldn't have come out any better. That's a little bit about, I think, what's happening at the moment. I'm happy to talk more, but there's a number of you here, and I'm hopeful that you have some good questions. So I'm happy to take any of those questions. Richard?
I got plenty of questions. Because this is a lot of fluff. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. So we talk about water. Well, that's one of them. Let me start. I could go all night. So we talk about a surplus in the fund balance, and you talk about taxpayer relief. And that's not really true. About 5 years ago, I don't know if we're in the 5th year of the so-called taxpayer relief initiative that was put forward by the council. You put $200,000 a year for tax relief. That's fluff, because on the average house, it comes out to a few pennies on the tax bill. Let's talk some serious tax relief. So what was our surplus this year? What's it look like it's gonna be?
It's in the neighborhood of $700,000.
Okay, so that's not that much on the budget. What's currently in the undesignated fund balance?
I don't have that number here with me today.
Okay. So when we say taxpayer relief, I've been asking for this to be done for years, and I want residents that live in this town to know this. So we put a warrant article out there, and the warrant article says there'll be no additional tax to the people for whatever it is, you know, playground, whatever. I wanted you to put on there in the same area, but if you choose not to do this, however it has to be worded, it would be 3 cents on your tax rate that could be taken off, or 4 cents, just like you do when you add to the tax rate. I've talked to so many people who come up to me and say, well, why wouldn't you vote for that? It's not costing us anything. I'm like, yeah, it always costs you. It's either money you paid, money you're gonna pay, money that was coming in through grants, unanticipated revenues, it's all your money. They don't wanna tell you that because you might not vote for it if you know it's really costing you. Your tax rate would be X lower if instead of they used it on that project, it was used for actual tax relief on the tax rate. And granted, this town's only, what, 25% of the total tax bill, or 24%, the schools the majority of it, whatever the numbers are. So why don't we do that so people know? Because that's much like the Gilchrist Road incident that we talked about up at the senior center. And your answer was, well, the people voted for it. Yeah, they voted for it, but most of the people had no idea that it was owned by a development company. We had development rights or conservation rights to it. And if they had not voted for that, there wouldn't be 96 units going in there because they wouldn't have been able to build on it.
Wow.
All right? Why don't we tell people this stuff? We don't lie, we give half the information.
Before we get into another topic, which is the...
Well, it's really the same, it's taxpayers' money.
Can you, I'm not sure I understand your question about the warrant articles and the wording of the warrant articles.
So you have the warrant articles, and you say the tax impact will be 0, it's being funded from the undesignated fund balance. So, if the number is 200,000 for whatever the project is, people look at it and say, oh, it says 0 tax impact. It's not really a 0 tax, and you've already paid that, or it's unanticipated revenue.
I understand.
It's all people's money.
Yeah.
So why don't we put, if this should fail, we will relieve the tax, if, you know, the council probably won't do this, but if I was on the council, I would. It will be 3 cents off your tax rate if you choose not to, but if you want it, that's fine. No, it looks like it's free. I have so many neighbors come up to me, and they sit there and say, well, it's not costing us anything, and then when I explain to them, they're like, well, they don't tell us that. No, of course I'm not gonna tell you that,
I
we won't vote for
I
it.
understand the question, so,
Well, it's not a difficult question.
well, thank you for clarifying. I think that where you and I agree is, it's not free money. No money is free. And so, by definition, money in the undesignated fund balance came to us through an appropriation somehow. So
That's right.
it was unanticipated revenue, it was revenues that came in over projection, or it was savings that budgetary surplus. Where I disagree with you though is, and I don't discount what you're, the conversations that you've had with your neighbors, I give the voters a little bit more credit than that. I don't think that the voters who are looking at that article, which by the way is constructed that way because state law requires it to be constructed that way.
I understand, but you can put something in the bottom.
I actually think that most of our voters, when they go to the polls, understand what they're voting on.
If you put that in there, for those that don't, and I'm not saying they're uneducated, they're trying to work 2 jobs, or they're both working, they're trying to pay their taxes, make it so they don't have to go find it. Make it so it's out there.
Yeah, again, you're not gonna hear a disagreement from me about how state law requires us to construct warrant articles. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's not very clear. An example of that is you have to raise and appropriate money that is coming from another source. It happened with the water infrastructure project. That looked like a $23 million project, and it was only raising, $2.95 million from Londonderry taxpayers. So I think there's a lot of what you're saying that I agree with, but I also think that voters, when they say yes or no on these articles, I think you have to assume that they know what they're voting on.
Well, you didn't on the 5 warrant articles that were put on for last year, for this year and passed, with 74, 75 on some of them, and you just said the water was overwhelming at 64, yet you're trying to kill those.
I wanna make sure we give other
Well,
people
I
a
was
chance.
just gonna
So,
say
yeah.
what he
Yeah.
said, basically,
I knew why you put your
I was
hand up.
the citizens petition that put in those articles, and it was said numerous times, I don't know if you said it, so I'm not gonna say that, but it was said numerous times at the council that the people didn't understand the warrant articles, that they weren't written properly, they were unclear.
But now they understand.
But
the
now
other thing.
they understand what
Fluff.
you just said, but they don't understand that. It's either they understand or they don't understand.
No, I think for the most part, when voters say yes or no, they understand what they're voting on. I
Thank
think
you.
that, voters have proven that they make pretty good choices over time. I will say that some of those, one or two of those articles, and I think you've acknowledged this, Deb, not internally consistent in terms of what they're amending within the administrative code, amending language that isn't actually there. So yes, I think you would have to say that that could be confusing. But for the most part, I think that voters understand what they're voting on, and I think that, they have a track record of making wise choices.
I agree.
Oof, can I just,
Yes.
if the warrant article on the land on Gilcrest had said, we're gonna put 96 townhouses here, no one would have voted for it.
Bingo.
So
Agreed.
it said, this is open land. There's 20, okay, so the town voted for it, but there's 20 acres there. Why couldn't the planning board say no to those 96 townhouses and say, okay, maybe 20 houses, an acre, a plot, would be more reasonable than trying to put in all these things on one road, which is already, it's a problem for us to take. I live on Ross Drive, it takes a problem for me to get out of Ross Drive. But the articles don't say that. The article said, open land.
my
And
point.
all the people thought about was, well, we're gonna sell this for $2 million and we're gonna get a tax credit.
I think that you raised some good points. One of them is that because the town held the conservation restriction on that property, they could impose certain restrictions on what ended up getting developed there. You would be able to put apartments on that under existing zoning, and the town would not release that without restrictions that said no apartments. So actually, the density could have been higher, but was restricted by the town council when they approved moving that article to the ballot, and then the voters approved it. Traffic on Ross Drive, I mean, that was discussed in multiple meetings just last night. That's a problem. I'm grateful to the town council for lowering the speed limit on Gilcrest to 30 miles an hour. It's not gonna relieve congestion, but, there is, I think, an indication that that will bring speeds down somewhat. But I recognize that Gilcrest is a controversial topic. This is something that was discussed at length throughout the budget process. It was not a secret that the land was being released for development. That was openly discussed in multiple public hearings. It was, included in letters to the editor. I think Deb, the Conservation Commission, and I sent the letter to the editor in the Londonderry Times. So that was not a secret. It was not a bait and switch. I understand people can disagree about whether that was a good thing for the town or a bad thing for the town, but I think it was fairly presented to the voters, and the voters approved it.
Gilchrist, 183 units in a mile. 183 units in 1 mile, okay? So you said you wouldn't allow apartments on this Gilchrist, but there's apartments going across the street at the old Luciano's, okay? 183 in a mile units. And they're saying that it'll only have an impact of 17 kids at the school. Where did that come from? I understand one of the areas is 55, but 93, and I don't know how many there are across the street, are not.
And that doesn't include the development on South Road.
Right, okay, but my concern is whoever did that traffic study, I wanna know if they did it at 2 o'clock in the morning, on a Saturday morning, because I live on the miserable, I call it the miserable mile, okay? From the, post office to 93, the miserable mile, that's what we call it. I don't know when they did it, that they said it wasn't a problem. It is a problem. It's a problem coming out of Home Depot onto Gilchrist, coming out of Hannaford's onto Gilchrist. The state just widened that road because it was such a problem. Where did they get their engineering license, whoever did that? So that's my first thing. That's very concerning to me, because now the miserable mile is gonna be worse. But the other thing about the water, where's the money from St. Gobain? We were promised in all of these meetings about giving up 2.9, now it's 2.95 million. Every meeting said 8,000 from the state, 2.9 from you, 14 million from St. Gobain. They're gone, they're gone, they're gone, they're gone. Where is that money?
So, 3 questions, I think. One was kids in schools. That comes from a New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority study that is used by developers across the state. And what that says is 0.17 kids per residential, multifamily residential unit in schools. It's actually lower than single-family homes, which makes sense if you think about it. So that's where that number came from. The indications are that with fertility rates dropping and the state aging, that number is only going down. And when it'll be next updated.
A lot of dogs.
Can afford to.
I am not a traffic engineer, but what I can tell you is that a couple of different things. One is, property rights are important in New Hampshire, and they're important in the United States. And people can develop their property within existing zoning. And if we were to start saying, you can't do that because we think it's too dense or we don't like it there's a process to go through to have a zoning ordinance, to update the zoning ordinance, and that process is underway with the work that the planning board is doing on the master plan to see where we want development, where we don't want development, but we can't tell people who have a permitted use on their property that you can't use your property. As far as traffic congestion on Gilchrist Road, I haven't heard anybody say, yeah, it's great, like, it's a great place to walk your dog. All I can tell you is that the town council is well aware of the problem. The traffic safety committee is well aware of the problem. It was discussed for probably an hour and a half hour total last night. And I think that, for the first time, you're starting to see some action on these traffic safety concerns. There was really a strong community demand, really, for action on Old Mammoth Road in North Londonderry. And the town council acted and put a bunch of stop signs up there that I think most people would say is working to alleviate cut-through traffic in that area. So, I can't wave a magic wand and improve traffic flow on Gilchrist Road. I think everybody recognizes that the town's growing. I think a lot of people think the town's growing too fast. It's time to look at a lot of these things. I haven't heard anybody say we need more development faster, but we're limited in what we can do and how quickly we can do it because it's local government and it doesn't, working at the state level.
I'm at the state.
It's the same thing. And I think you had another question that I forgot.
What happened to St. Gobain
Oh,
money?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. So, as the one of the people who was, out in front on that in multiple public meetings, talking with the lawyers, talking with the council, I can tell you that I never promised, and I never heard anybody promise, that as soon as the warrant article passed, St. Gobain's money would materialize. I think we were honest with the community that there is no, and you asked those questions, Richard, Deb asked those questions, where's the written guarantee? Where's the guarantee? There is no written guarantee, and that's what I said during the budget process, which is we are negotiating with St. Gobain. It is, nobody who's participating in negotiations like this would say it's a good idea for us to broadcast what's happening in those negotiations. What I can tell you is there's been significant progress. I think that with the regulatory standard coming from 12 to 4 parts per trillion for PFAS, those are more homes within the consent decree area that St. Gobain needs to remediate. That's extra incentive for St. Gobain to come to the table. And I'm optimistic that that's what's happening.
Can I just finish on this?
Yeah.
What happened to Plan B if it does not happen?
So Plan B is that by ourselves, without St. Cobain's money, we can run 15,000 linear square feet of water main down High Range Road. So that is a significant water infrastructure project that will allow us to remediate and
And that's
hook-
using that loan money?
and hook into, that's part of it, yes. And hook into people with contaminated wells in this area, and branch out into the neighborhoods. That's assuming that none of the St. Cobain money ever materializes. I think that's unlikely.
So I don't think St. Cobain's gonna come through, and I've said that from the get-go. But I do wanna say, so we took out a loan for X amount of money to put in a pipeline that benefits Pennachuck. Because those people who get water service off that line, and if they hook up, would end up being Pennachuck customers,
Yep.
and they would be charged.
Yep.
And there was never a negotiation to get a different water company that sells a lower rate. We are now stuck with Pennachuck, and we put in an $8 million loan for a company.
We paid their infrastructure.
A $2.95 million.
Well,
An
okay,
$8
two
million
point five
grant.
million, it doesn't matter, we put in this money
I understand.
for a company.
Yeah, so
That's the
basically,
point.
everybody should know, St. Cobain is not a for-profit company. A lot of people think that St. Cobain's water rates are too high.
No,
wait,
Hold on, you got the wrong company.
Pennachuck's rates are too high.
Yeah, they are.
And I mean, Chrissy, you and I have had that conversation.
Yeah, crazy.
And so one of the things that the council looked at recently was what would it look like if the town took over the Pennachuck infrastructure in Londonderry and went into the water business, either subcontracting the operation and maintenance or doing it ourselves. What that study showed is that over time, the town could offer more competitive rates than St. Cobain. What has happened in the meantime? What has happened in the meantime? Pennachuck has filed with the Public Utilities Commission an application to consolidate its corporate entities into one. One of the reasons that their rates are so high is because their corporate structure is pockets across the state. And there's a lot of inefficiency there. And there's also some problems with their ability to access the capital markets because of how they're structured from a corporate standpoint. While that process is pending, I think that we should see how it turns out, because it will go through a thorough vetting. It will be reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission. It will be reviewed by the Consumer Advocate to see if it's going to offer the rate relief that Pennachuck is promising. The other thing I would say is, you may well be right that at the end of the day, Pennachuck just can't be competitive with its rates. We have to do one thing at a time. We can't be building a $23 million water infrastructure expansion while we're trying to take over the company that's servicing that area and has the franchise.
I totally understand, but you need to have plans. You need to have plan A, plan B, plan C. If A does this, you do this. If B does this, you do this. And that's my fear, is we're not gonna have those things in queue to be able to move quicker for our own benefit. To be able to adjust those plans as things change going on, right?
Yep.
Just like a company would do, they adjust as things go on, and as we do that, we would then be able to, I think, be able to even convince maybe Pennachuck to pay off that loan for us, if they end up being the people who own that pipeline. But we don't know, because I don't know, nobody knows what the plans are. If this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this. And if it doesn't go this way, we could go back here or go here. I see nothing in writing. It's just like, you talk about the traffic study. You go on the planning board website that used to have everything up there. As a resident, you could look and find what plans were in the makings, what's going on. You could find the traffic study and be educated when you went to the meetings. Now you can't find them.
Can I answer?
Yep.
Again,
Yeah,
I think
you
there
can.
was a number of questions that kind of
That
turned
wasn't a question, it was a statement, but.
Well, I won't respond to the statement, but I'll respond to the question, which was
Okay.
about the plan B, or what do we do
Yeah,
next?
just moving a flow chart.
I don't think there's anybody who says that if you're looking at expanding the availability of clean, affordable drinking water in Londonderry, that the work that we're doing in High Range Road right now is a bad idea. It's a foundation. It is something that will allow other work in the future. One of the things that has happened recently is there's a utilities committee in Londonderry now, and they have taken on the task of looking at where the water should go next. Because as I've said before, it's not my decision, it's not your decision, it should be a community decision about where we go next. This is a water main, yes, we can hook in, you know, several hundred residences along the main, but really we wanna branch out into the neighborhoods.
So I see two utility people here since, you know, I was the person who started it. Are you guys working on any water projects? Are you having
Yes.
meetings with meetings?
Yeah, you
Can
want
you
me
should
to say
share with them
something?
right now so people can hear.
Can I say something?
Sure,
Go ahead.
Oh, Martha, go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, fine.
I don't know.
Can I identify myself?
Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Ray Breslin. I'm just a citizen. But I am on the utility committee and I'm on the water committee, okay? So we're looking at a lot of things, okay? As to what the town's plan is moving forward in the next 10 years, okay? And so we don't have any power, but we have the ability to look at a lot of things and bring them forward, and so that the town has a plan moving forward. Now, by the way, the town is working on a master plan, a revision of the current master plan, that has priority issues in there, such as water, sewer, traffic, all of the really important issues. But let's get back to the water issue, which is of main concern, I think, of most people, because we have issues with contamination in the town, and we realize that, and it's not going away, and that's why municipal water is so important. But we have to look at it very carefully. There are two sources. It either comes from Manchester, actually all the municipal water really comes from Manchester, with a few minor exceptions. But the billing, for the most part, for most of Londonderry, is with Pennachuck Water. Okay. A very well-established company, probably the biggest water company in the state of New Hampshire. So, they are the supplier, along with Manchester Water, to municipal water. Now we're looking at a point, where else are we going to run pipes, particularly to the folks that are impacted in the consent decree. In other words, people with contaminated wells.
What about Ross Drive?
Pardon?
Ross.
Okay, and that's a good point. This
We're a
lady-
mess, and you're gonna build, they're gonna start building at the top of
okay,
Gilchrist
okay.
and
So-
move more
so-
about water.
So this is a concern, because not only do we have the problem with St. Gobans that has contaminated the soil and the water, we also have other issues with at least two Superfund sites we have in town. One of them being Tinkham, which is just north of Ross Drive, and unfortunately, those folks don't have municipal water, even though there is municipal water going down South Gilchrist Road. Right by them. So, really, those folks ought to be taken care of, okay? However, let's get back to the warrant article 3 that was passed this spring, in March. And that's a good thing, because it's a move in the right direction, okay? However, there are a lot of other players in here, okay? Even though Londonderry has got sufficient money to move forward, Londonderry is not gonna go out and start digging the trench and putting the pipes in the ground, okay? We have to work with Pennachuck Water, Manchester Water, and with the money that we have the ability to do that.
Leave it there, it's fine.
However, we gotta have a discussion with Pennachuck Water and make sure that they are on board moving forward, because they are our key, I don't wanna say partner,
Can I add a couple of things?
certainly. Wait a minute.
So I'm Martha Smith, I'm also on the utility committee. The utility committee meets the first Tuesday of every month in Moose Hill Conference Room. And our next meeting, I believe, is August 6th.
By the way, it's a public meeting.
It's a public meeting, exactly, and the CEO from Pennachuck and several other people from Pennachuck are scheduled to come to that meeting. So if you're interested in hearing about Pennachuck, I would suggest you come to our meeting on August 6th. It's in the evening, it begins at 7 o'clock. And we're hoping to gain a lot of information from that meeting as well. I mean, they're coming to present to us, and so we understand, because there are several projects going on in town right now that Pennachuck is involved in. And so they're hopefully gonna update us as to those projects and exactly what's going on, and hopefully update us a little bit about High Range Road and any negotiations that they've been involved in that's going on there. So I highly recommend, if you're interested in water issues, please come to the meeting on August 6th. And Ross Drive, we are very aware of Ross Drive and the whole problem in that neighborhood, and we would very much like to solve that issue with water. I don't know if we can solve the traffic issue, but we're interested in that too.
Martha, can you just point out for everybody, the town hall is this building over here for folks who may not be across the parking lot?
Oh, yeah, oh,
Is
yeah.
where the utilities committee meets.
Yeah, that's where we meet, exactly.
I don't have my compass with me.
Yeah, it's
but
right across from.
Feels like it's
across
over
the
there.
front door of the
Yeah.
library.
Behind the
right in
police
front of-
station.
Yeah.
Behind the police station.
So can I ask a question that kind of dovetails into all of this? So I live not far from Ross Drive, I'm on Forest Street, and there's another new development going in that's not standard lot sizes, that it's gonna be some sort of condo, community well, or some other well thing. And so there's concerns from my side that we are already facing traffic issues, and yet something new has been approved that's not just standard house lot sizes. So I want to know what the thought process is. I know that it's private property, but also they're not standard lots that are going in there, so there's got to be some sort of council approval or variance that goes into that. So why are so many non-standard lots being approved in places especially where we already have compounding issues, and this is only gonna make it worse? And you say, well, I'm on Forest, I'm not on South Road where that is. My property backs up to it. So I am fortunate that I am one of the ones on Forest that is not likely to see it from my house. However, I am also one on Forest that has the fewest well issues, in that mine has never run dry. Many of them have. I have an oddity. I am in a different aquifer than the rest. My well is 30 feet deep. Because I have 30 feet deep of well with 27 feet of water, and I have like 6 times the normal amount of water. Why? Because I'm in a different aquifer, because I'm more on the surface water. And the one that they're talking for, that development, is reaching into my aquifer. And so, like, yes, I have signed up for the testing and all of that's going through, but for me on my side, I'm wondering, okay, and for reference, my parents bought my house in 1989. I have grown up in Londonderry, I have been in Londonderry for a long time, even though I am not that old, but almost my entire life, those lots have been for sale and have not been allowed to be developed because they couldn't be standard lot sizes. So why now, when we have all of these water issues, all of these traffic issues, are we allowing these non-standard things to happen?
That's a great question. So I don't know the details of, I don't agree with that, Christine. I don't think anybody's getting paid off.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Just about money.
But
Money
So-
for those people that own
so-
the property, yeah.
I'm not familiar with the details of that particular project. My belief is that it's what's called a conservation subdivision, which is an option that developers can access under existing zoning. And what a conservation subdivision does is it prioritizes the preservation of open space and natural resources.
It's not open space.
Like I said, I'm not familiar with that one, but I think it's a conservation subdivision. Regardless, how can people develop lots, that don't comply with zoning? Well, the answer is you either have to comply with zoning or you have to get a variance. And I'm not familiar if a variance was granted up there, but I think that the public should be assured that all of these things are either complying with the existing regulations or they're going through a careful vetting before the Zoning Board of Adjustment, which is going to look at whether there's a special circumstance with that property that justifies some kind of adjustment to zoning.
I think I'm at least standing up and saying that we are concerned about that vetting process because so many of these similar things are happening here in town. So I'm not saying there isn't a process, but I'm saying we the citizens are concerned about that process. And not just new people to town, not just people that have been here 10 years. I've been here, I don't know what year it is, so. like, what is it, 40 years my family has been in town? We're not gonna
I think
count
that's
those,
good,
but
that's
like.
great, that's great feedback. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, I don't have a response to that other than it's good feedback. Thank you
Yeah.
for the feedback. I can understand why people feel that way, seeing the pace of development and seeing some of the projects that are going in.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to be involved in review for these. These are all public meetings, as Ray pointed out. Oftentimes, the abutters and the residents who show up drive the result.
But I will tell you, abutters aren't necessarily notified. We
So-
didn't
so-
get notified,
So,
even though,
legal abutters should be getting notified.
but
It has
but is it because there's wetlands between that and me? The town owns the wetlands portion.
Between us and that
I can't speak to this, but I don't.
Yeah, but
What I can tell you is that the law provides that legal abutters, and that's defined in the law, have to be notified.
But I'm
Next
saying that from a
item.
town perspective, we should look slightly outside of that and say, even if I'm not a legal abutter, because the town is, wouldn't I have an interest because I am the next actual person in line? And wouldn't it be good to let anybody within, say it's a 2-mile radius versus just the lot abutters that should be notified that something is gonna happen, and these are the meetings to show up? Because I may
would-
not speak up a ton, but I actually show up at meetings
Yeah.
and listen a lot.
I would agree. I mean, sure, if money were no object, I would agree. We should notify the whole town. But what happens is we send an $8 piece of mail to every legal abutter, and that comes from the taxpayers. So there has to be some balance here in terms of who's notified. Do you read the Londonderry Times?
Yes,
Goes to every house in town. We place our ads for ZBA meetings and planning board meetings in the Londonderry Times.
but I don't necessarily know what that means unless I dig into stuff and understand.
I will
Whereas
say-
if I got not an $8 piece of mail, if I got a $1.25, hey, I would pay it for any project. Like that is a good use of my money as a taxpayer to say, people are being notified that surround those people, and that instead of just abutters, that we as a town can say, we want it to have a 1/2-mile radius. I'm not saying the whole town, but that's a more reasonable saying, like,
You know what,
hey, I'm
that-
within a 1/2 mile.
mean,
I should know.
Isn't the developer that's supposed to be paying those fees, if I remember correctly?
Yes, you're right, for
It's not the
ZBA
town
applications.
paying, the developer
Um,
pays it.
So yeah, the answer is sure. You could have a regulation or a provision that required that. I mean.
I'm saying you as town manager,
you-
why don't you bring
And
it up
that's
in
why
your
we
next
need public
thing?
meetings at planning boards, where
Because
you
that-
can bring
that's the
things
first time
up
I've
like
heard
that.
that feedback. That's why I said it's good feedback. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Yeah.
On that same subject, I think one of the biggest complaints that I hear, and I hear it all the time, is that you can go to a planning board meeting when they're discussing, but you can't say anything. You can't
I
speak.
think that
Christine,
was
that's-
true until recently.
You
I-
can't,
I-
there's a
wait,
period in the beginning now, right?
No, there's
Are they
not.
allowing public
Oh,
comment?
I don't
in
know.
the
I haven't
beginning?
seen an agenda.
I haven't seen it on the agenda.
So.
Yes,
But
I
the
will
problem
bring it.
was too many people felt by the time they had a public hearing, it was a done deal.
It really should be, public input should be at conceptual or design review, when the developer's willing to make changes before they spend thousands and thousands of dollars on site plans and whatever, and legal fees. That's when the people should put their
So you're
input in.
saying now I can go to any planning board meeting and speak?
Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Should be on the agenda.
That's
public
my
comment.
understanding. My understanding is that they have revised the rules of order to allow that. Additionally,
Deb.
Christine, in a public hearing, and these applications are public hearings, the public can speak.
I understand in
So-
a
It's
public
too
hearing,
late.
but by the time it gets to a public hearing, it has been my understanding from people, because I hear all the time, being your newest state rep, all the time, it's too late, it's a done deal by the time you get there.
I don't agree with that, but here's where I think your comments are important. That public confidence in what these boards are doing is really important. And
I'm not blaming the board, I'm blaming the process.
Well, I'm not blaming the board either, but what I'm saying is that there has to be confidence in the integrity of the process. And I think what we're learning here tonight is there may be some questions about the integrity of the process. There may be better communication that could take place. I'm not saying no, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. I think everybody agrees that that's a good idea.
So the process is,
Amanda's had her hand
I
up.
was just gonna say, if we could work to improve that line of communication, because I'm not a direct abutter of that project, but I'm across the street, and they are testing my well anyways to see if there are impacts on the work that they're doing, but they're discussing doing a community well. Our well runs, I don't know what, 175 feet? So 175 feet or something, very adequate depth. We run dry all the time. So I personally have very significant concerns about them drying right from a similar area. And then what happens to us if that's built and we're constantly dry? How do we have water?
And for perspective, Amanda is across the street from me. So I am on the swamp side. Amanda is literally diagonally across the street. I don't have well issues, but
So-
everyone on her
right.
side of the
And
street.
I'm on
Any
super
rhyme or
fun,
reason.
and I have.
Right, and so although I don't immediately abut, I might not get that notification, but if there is genuine public comment, I could bring that concern because I'm still impacted, even though I'm not a direct abutter.
Right.
And so I think that, if we could ensure that there's a greater line of communication, I think
I
it'd be
think
really
that's great,
beneficial.
a great suggestion.
Yeah.
That's a great
Because
suggestion.
and it also will impact us for traffic leaving our neighborhood as well, because
yeah.
that's going by it as the main on South Road, and it's, the entrance is, I don't know, 100 feet from the current
That's
road.
the issue with the legal notices, Mike, and sometimes they're a little too legal, and people don't like, they'll say
Yeah,
lot
can we get,
number,
like, a
blah, blah,
Cliff
blah, and they
Notes?
don't always say the address, and people don't know
Yeah.
really what they're saying, and I know a while back, when just say Laura or Colleen or even what's her name, Cynthia May, they would put a little bit of a more
Claim it
dumbed down
first.
description in that legal notice so that they would understand, everybody would understand what they were talking, because not everybody know where's lot 22,
Right, right.
whatever, or what that means, what they're doing.
The address should be included there.
Right, but they also don't understand like the what they're actually talking
Yeah.
about, I mean.
It's a good suggestion. Again, I'm certainly not gonna
I
say,
know, I'm just
Deb,
putting
you're
up- that's what
wrong.
this is
Like,
for,
I don't
to
want-
make suggestions,
I
right?
think it's a great suggestion, is to try to make sure that everybody understands what's
Like a direct
being
translator right
discussed.
beside it.
Discussed.
Mike, is not someone across the street considered a butter from a project?
It's within so many feet of the property line. I was trying to look it up on town.
Yeah.
About 300 feet.
So the town could go in and, if it's like within, I don't know what the number is, I'm just using the number.
Yeah.
If you're within, if the project property is, anybody within 300 feet of that. So maybe we gotta go out 600 or 900. I
Yeah.
don't remember what the number, I was trying to look it
I
up.
was gonna
I'm
say,
terrible
so
on the phone.
this is one of those circumstances, and it's true in a lot of places in town where there's wetlands, right? There is we'll call it swamp wetlands, that runs between
Right.
South Road and Forest Street, which then become, there's swampland
And the
there.
town owns it.
The town
So
owns
they're
it.
the abutter that would get
They're
notified.
the abutter, and
if
there's
you're outside,
enough of
you're the
it
next one you
that
want.
it's, especially for our property, I think there's enough of it
Yeah.
that we wouldn't, it didn't fall within that, which is why we wouldn't have
Right.
gotten a legal
Yeah, no,
notice.
it's a good point. I mean,
But we are,
Like
we
state
are
town
the direct,
property.
yeah, we are the direct impact
Yeah.
because it's wet, nobody can do anything on those wetlands, right? And so it's not until we see or hear people doing stuff on the other side of the road that we're like, crap's
it's
happening
too late.
over there. That property was for sale forever, but I know they couldn't put single houses on it for a long time. So what's happening now? And we have to go back and dig in. And it's already past whatever planning meetings because we didn't get notified. So I think that's even part of it where there's town property or wetlands or whatever you wanna call it. It's bypassing those abutter notices because they're not within that footage.
that's a really
You're right on.
really good point.
so when they sell the property first, that has to be a warrant article?
No.
When they
No.
sold that property?
No,
This parcel, I think, is private.
there is a
Yeah.
statute that, you're talking about town property?
Yeah.
Being sold, yeah. That one was put on the ballot because the conservation restriction said it could be amended by a town vote, meaning a vote of the people. And so, in the ordinary course, like the town doesn't sell property every day or every week. But it does sell property from time to time, and that takes place through it's actually a fairly lengthy process that involves the planning board and the town council.
Passed by 33
On
people.
that particular piece of property,
And
just so
we
you
in
know,
the
because I looked up the
about it.
easement,
We would have voted against.
it was in the original easement that they could come back and negotiate with the town council and the conservation committee to do what the town did. I talked to the conservation committee, and what they told me is they were never contacted until it was all done.
See, Richard, you raised that point up at the senior center. That's wrong. I can tell you it's wrong
Well,
because.
the chair of the conservation
Well,
committee told me that.
If I can finish, there were multiple meetings where that transaction was discussed with the Conservation Commission. I can tell you that the chairperson of the Conservation Commission and I authored a letter to the editor that appeared in Deb's paper about that transaction. So what you're saying is not correct.
I'm saying what the
Oh,
papers say,
let me-
and I was told it didn't happen by the people that should have been involved.
I'm not,
just telling
okay,
you.
thank you for that clarification.
I think you
I'm
were
not
on the
saying
board at
that
the
you
time.
weren't told that, I'm saying that that's not what
I
happened.
was totally against the buying of it unless all the money went to conservation, because the initial warrant was people were sold on that warrant, on that property, and voted in that money to buy that land from that developer thinking it was conservation, regular conservation land, that the town would own. So the people donated that, gave their money to do that. And I personally believe that all of the money that we got from that, and I said this to you, and I said it when I was on the council, should have went right to conservation to buy another piece of property, to save another piece of land in town, and that was my own opinion.
It hasn't closed yet, the money hasn't been collected.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, sir. Yeah.
New in town, but I've lived in Derry for 35 years. We're from the Baldwin. And we're just here for information. We'd like to know a little more about plans for Woodmont Common. What are some of the development plans going to be? You know, there's a 260-unit apartment complex going in, which is across Woodmont Avenue. Perry Medical Center is building an administrative building nearby. And as we're seeing, congestion, Old Quarry Road, Michael's Way are all becoming heavily congested. We're just curious. We're just here to learn what's happening and even invite someone from the town or from Woodmont Common to come and speak to the community involved.
I'd be happy to come and meet you all at the Baldwin. I'm not speaking for Woodmont, but I know Woodmont would be delighted to come out as well. And I'd be happy to set that up. What I can tell you is that, you know, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that people in Londonderry have been thrilled with the pace of development at Woodmont Commons. That's not something that I've heard. But what I can, so there are a couple of reasons for that. One is, you know, the lack of sewer capacity, particularly on the west side of the highway, has really hampered the full build out of that area. That's something that I'm happy to report. We got a $4 million grant last year through Congressman Pappas' office, approved by the Senate and then signed by the President. That is going to enable us to fully sewer all of that area, which will allow the development program to continue. There is another medical facility that is either in the process or has just been approved. I have heard discussions about an entertainment venue, additional restaurants. I think that the east side of the highway, I have heard there are discussions about commercial and industrial uses. That area is programmed for civic and institutional use. And I'm optimistic that a civic community use on the east side of the highway is on the horizon. And so I think for the first time in a while, I can stand here and say that I'm expecting to start to see a lot happening over there on the west side, particularly by the Baldwin. Everybody asks, when are the restaurants coming? I think and you probably were promised like some restaurants. I think they're gonna start to come in. I'm aware of discussions that Woodmont is having, fairly advanced discussions with, and I'm not able to say who, but you know, a well-known establishment that I think will be a nice complement for that area. I think that you'll see a lot more activity when the people come, and that area is programmed for a certain number of residential units. A lot of those have already been built, but there's still room to go. And once those units get fully built out, I do think that we're going to start to see more of those amenities that probably attracted you here in the first place.
It's to a two-thirds, and that is, everybody's concerned down in Gilbert. I'm one of those residents at Golden, and I'm happy to be in Londonderry. It's a great, great town, and we're listening here to all the concerns we have. Our concern in the lovely Baldwin community, we happen to abut 93. And with this increased development, we're going to have increased traffic. So not only will Gilchrist be impacted, but all of the area on exit 4, which is immediately behind the building in which I live. We're already in a crescendo of noise with 93 traffic. We have 2 openings right there at exit 4 that may, if we could, be improved, mitigating some of that noise with additional trees, or perhaps working with the state, whatever the procedure is. We'd like to kind of know how to go forward, see if we could even do a barrier wall. Something that is extended by the federal government that had happened lower down on that area. Because we are going to have a huge amount of increased traffic with what's going on across from us. And noise. So that's one of the reasons I'm here, to learn if other people have those issues. We already know everybody's water sources, everything's going to be impacted by this increase in population. We're just delighted to be here. We're senior citizens. We don't look it because we're working hard to stay alive.
We love that.
And so many of our residents have returned from the 22 different states across the country to be with their children who are in the area. So we will be interfacing in this community. We hope to be having a good time with all of you and getting to know you.
Welcome.
Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you for the comments and the I think it was a question about the sound barrier. What you said about, you know, coming home to New Hampshire after having been away, that's exactly what Old Home Day is all about. So it's a nice time to you know, be here and to kind of come together, and that just kind of resonated with me. I think that what I would say about sound is, yeah, I mean, I can when you're driving on the highway, it's kind of alarming how close it is there. And so I can tell you that the folks just to the north of you on Trolley Car Lane have been complaining about this for years. They have a sound wall that's finally going in, finally been built. I haven't heard a report back, but I also haven't heard a complaint. So I don't know.
I do know from, actually, I have learned about those 2 people who were instrumental in getting improvement on Trolley Car Lane. And the fellow did do the decibel ordinance, a zone 7B, something or other. And he said it has been improved since that area. So at least that's of some help, and maybe additional trees.
Yeah, but it's probably not helping you so much. And so, I mean, what I can tell you is I don't know where that strip of property is that you're talking about. I don't know if it's owned by Woodmont, if it's owned by the town or by the state. I don't know if it's that'd be my guess is it's in the state, right, or the 93 corridor. That would probably involve the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. Oh, and Christine Perez is state rep from Londonderry. I can tell you that and Christine, and tell me if you disagree with this, I think the DOT is pretty responsive to these concerns. And we can also put you in touch with the project manager for the 4A project. She's been very responsive and helpful. That's on the new exit.
The new exit that's coming.
So yeah, I get why you're concerned about that. Is there a town solution or a town option? I'm not sure, but I think you probably want to start with DOT, and then certainly we're happy to be part of the solution if we can.
Is there a name you could share with us?
Wendy Johnson.
Oh, Wendy Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir.
Hi, my name is Tony Alcorn. I'm also a Baldwin visitor. And my question has to do with an article in the Londonderry Times last week. Can you say if energy aggregation is going to be adopted in Londonderry?
No, I can't say, and there's members of the utility committee here. What I can tell you is that it's been a years-long process, probably about a year-long process to get to here. It requires a bunch of steps. I can tell you that after the town council said, yes, let's move forward with getting the Public Utilities Commission to review it, they did that last night. I signed the letter to the PUC this morning, and that's going to start that process. It then has to come back to the town council, and only if the rates that are being offered are better than the Eversource rates, I would expect. I can't guarantee you that the town council will say, yeah, we're gonna proceed with it, but I think that would certainly be a condition for the town council saying, yes, after having gone through this whole process, the rates make sense, they're lower than Eversource, we're gonna proceed.
So it's the town council that would decide yes or no?
Correct.
What would be the timeframe for that?
So my understanding, and this is really being spearheaded by the Utilities Committee. The Utilities Committee has established a goal or a projected time frame of the fall for making this decision. And I can't guarantee, and again, Christine, you probably won't disagree with me, that you can't always guarantee how fast or slow state agencies are going to move.
Now, are you all on the same rate?
No.
Baldwin?
Well,
Yes.
The Baldwin is a major
Right.
consumer of
Right,
power.
right.
So we have an interest for that reason.
But they use Eversource?
Yes.
Yes, they
don't individually meter.
No, they use because there's two parts to Eversource. There's what you pay for the
Transmission.
electricity and moving the electricity.
Transmission, distribution.
So, like, I have Eversource to move my electricity, but I don't buy their electricity, it's what it is.
Yeah, if there's a deduction in your rate, it's only gonna be on the supply part of the bill, it won't be on the transmission. That's
And your
all gonna
biggest
stay with
part.
Eversource, the billing will be through Eversource, you'll just be buying basically from a third party like you can do now with Direct Energy. But this is a little more of a buying group put together, and it's only gonna be on your supply part. So like my supply part of my house last month was $42. If it was a 10% deduction in the rate, I'd say $4.20. I'm just using round numbers.
I would just add to this that, before any of this happens, there's going to be, notice to everybody in town and a meeting that you'll be invited to come to find out more about it. And I think that there wouldn't be a launch date until after Eversource does its next buy of energy, which I think is in January. I think they buy in June and January.
August and February.
Oh, August and February. So it would be after the February buy.
Once we know what Eversource is.
Correct.
Yep. Sir, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, I'm new to town, so probably about a year and change. I just have a question, so we're doing a lot of infrastructure, residential infrastructure building. What are we doing to entice the current residents of Londonderry? When I say that, I'm talking a park to take the kids, I use Wyndham because we go to Wyndham a lot. So something like that, or restaurants, or just infrastructure that's gonna support the residents that we're hoping to attract. And I know that I've been to a couple of town hall meetings, and I did some research on I'll use the medical center, for example, right? The mental health center?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
the average salary there is gonna be probably around 55 to 65,000, right? So, and these homes are going for 480 to 700. You can't work there and live here.
Yeah, you probably
So,
Yeah, could be a entry-level cop or firefighter level one.
yeah.
And I think
So,
that's a problem.
Well, I believe that we're more of a transit community, or that's what we're moving into, especially being off the 93.
That's what we've
So are we-
always been.
So, are we going to do any, or are we working on anything infrastructure-wise to keep the residents here, that are currently here, and entice more to come that want to work in our community?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So I'd say a couple of things. I mentioned the playground. I think that investments like that, not huge money, significant, but not big return on investment, I think, there. Our recreation offerings are, if you look like a year ago and today, significantly enhanced because of investments that we've made in the recreation department. There's a summer program that's running right now at Matthew Thornton. I think that's like 170 kids. We're also, yeah.
I understand that we have those programs. I'm more talking about a facility where we can go to if I want to take my kids out to like kick around.
Oh, I got you.
Like
Yep.
basketball courts.
Yep.
Like a complex almost. I know we have one right back here for baseball.
Yep. So that's the pickleball. So what? I hear you. So
Behind the fire station.
I understand that.
One thing that we've got that lava complex behind the fire station. Continue to make investments in that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, we had a $800,000, $700,000 initiative to bring pickleball courts probably to the West Road fields last cycle. That failed. It wasn't a great time to be asking the voters to support something like that necessarily, and I can certainly understand why it failed. The Lions Hall, I think a lot of people view that as a potential community space that could house recreation offerings and community offerings. I can tell you that there are often discussions about upgrades to the West Road fields, to the LAFA complex. But in terms of like an additional large town facility on the model of LAFA, I'm not sure. I can't tell you that something like that is in the works at the moment.
Curious. So.
There is a new Y coming towards Woodmont that's gonna be bigger than the one in Nashville, which will have just as many services, if not more, like therapy, inside pools, climbing walls, rock rappelling, like Nashville's.
Yeah, it'll be in the Woodmont?
In the Woodmont area, yep, and the other Y will stay open as camp and a senior center, teen center.
I just want to expand more on facilities for families. One of the things that I don't feel like we talk about enough as a whole community, a rather small community, is hockey. If you do the math, just with the boys' hockey programs that are out there, Londonderry families are spending anywhere from $4 to $6 million a year on hockey programs, all located outside of Londonderry.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we had a municipal rink that those programs could then use.
I'm a hockey.
You're a hockey player?
I advocate for, my grandchildren all play hockey. My granddaughter plays hockey at prep school because she was recruited there. She's 16. I'm pro hockey. It's a great sport. It's doing wonderful. But my grandchildren went to Salem. They left Hudson because of the quality. They went to Salem and then they get recruited off from there. I think the possibility of bringing a rink here, I don't think, unless you can get Woodmont to do it, you're gonna be able to do it.
I would agree with that, not because I don't think it's a great idea. I think
it's a great idea.
I think it is a great idea, but you know the Londonderry taxpayers. I've gotten to know the Londonderry taxpayers. I think that we value very careful expenditure of public dollars. And
that would be great for Woodmont, though.
I don't know what a hockey rink costs, but I can tell you that like the largest. Oh, you're a hockey mom.
So my husband's a Zamboni driver, and I have two kids who play hockey. I can speak to the London, because my son actually plays on the Londonderry Middle School League, and they have to go to Tri-Town to play. There's no facility here, obviously, but I can speak that hockey rinks are extremely expensive to run and facilitate. I know in Amesbury, where I used to work, they were trying to put in 6 rinks up there. They actually had to cut it down to 3. To my last knowledge, I don't know if that's changed, due to the cost. The cost of running the facility, all the refrigeration, everything like that. My husband runs, helps run the Phillips Academy in Andover, the rink there. They often have to shut down a rink during the summer because they can't afford to fund it. So it is a huge cost, although I would love to see it because it would save me a drive. But and I think it's a great, obviously great community our service to offer us. But it would be definitely a huge cost.
Just before we jump back to Bob, I just want to thank you. This is Erin, the library director, for hosting us tonight. I'm only going to take one or two more questions, but I wanted to give you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I think it's something worth looking at. Obviously, it's not. It would be a huge expense to do something like a hockey rink, especially an enclosed one. But
What about,
if
sorry
you
to interrupt,
look,
what about a roller hockey rink?
well, I was going to
Yeah,
get
because
there.
the cost of that would be less, but can be used for other things as well.
So I grew up in Westchester County, New York, with a lot of municipal rinks that were all undercover but outdoors.
Yeah.
You would have your winter season, that ice goes away,
Right.
and you're playing on a court.
Yeah.
It's
Less than
rollerblades
an inside
season.
facility, absolutely.
But then you still have the opportunity to keep those programs running year round.
Yeah.
It obviously changes the mechanics a little bit
Yeah.
during the summer,
Yeah, that's true.
but that's a chance for the town to generate some revenue.
No, I agree.
I think one thing that I have heard is not a hockey rink, but maybe an entertainment venue is some kind of public-private partnership, or a private. Fortunately, those and I've got 5 minutes or just under 5 minutes left. I'm being signaled. I think maybe potentially a little bit more viable and doable for the tax returns, I think, as well.
Why don't you go to Woodmont and approach them before they're done? Go to Woodmont and approach them.
I'm not in
It's better than the traffic on 93, right?
Oh, will you pay for it?
Where do your kids play?
Ours don't play, but the whole neighborhood.
Yes.
I have a question about safety. It seems like 102 is not a safe place to walk. And if someone tries to cross the highway, they're going to take the right hand. Especially where 103, 128 can go by Market.
Yeah, we rescued a turtle.
I was talking to this lovely lady earlier, and I'm not really, we've been here for 47 years. And she doesn't dare go to Canterbury because it's not safe. What are we going to do about that?
You just take a light.
It's the state, it's
State
the
road
state.
can't.
State road
Right,
can't do it.
so actually, we had this conversation last night at Traffic Safety Committee meeting. There is a mechanism to ask the state to do a safety audit, if you will, of a state road. And actually,
Stay in the road and they see if I get hit?
I hope not.
Turtle the other day.
I hope not. But Senator Carson was there last night speaking to traffic safety, and she became involved in a recent effort to improve the safety of 102 further to the west.
What has she done?
But if we can chat afterwards, we can follow up on that and make sure the state is aware of what's going on there.
By the way, in that regard, Southern New Hampshire Planning is asking for public comment in regards to highway and safety issues, okay? They're asking for public comment. And so you can comment. By the way, Southern New Hampshire Planning meets in Manchester several times a month. But just look up Southern New Hampshire Planning, and you can make a comment about your concerns about traffic issues, particularly if you're concerned about walking across 102 here in Londonderry. Don't do it.
Thank you, Ray.
My husband suggested that we become Uber drivers and drive people across.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna take one more question from Chad Franz, who is the chair of the town council. I want to acknowledge John Farrell, who is a town councilor as well. He's in the back. Chad.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. So in addition to the Londonderry Times where meeting notices are published, two-part question. Can you talk a little bit about where residents can find, upcoming meeting schedules, agendas and stuff? And also, can you talk a little bit about, open positions, maybe not specifically which positions on a board or whatever, but where they can find like an application to fill out so they can, apply to be on an open board
Yep.
or something like that?
That's a great question. So, first part of it is, we post land use, pretty much actually every town meeting, we post physically at town hall on a bulletin board. I realize that, that's probably not how we're gonna, reach most people, but people come in and they pay their taxes and they register their cars and it'll be there. We do have a website, and there's a sort of a community or town calendar on the front page of that website that has all the meetings. You can sign up for meeting notifications or just all notifications on the town website so that you're notified if a meeting is added. And we use Facebook quite a bit as well to publicize either that a meeting's been scheduled or that it's been canceled, removed, or what have you. And then I'd encourage everybody to look in the Londonderry Lantern. That's our publication spearheaded by Tristan Kildonen, who's with my office. And of course, you can just call and ask as well, and we'll be happy to take those questions. You had one more question?
Open positions
Yeah,
on
yeah.
some of these boards, where can they go to find?
Yeah.
And what do they need to do if they're interested?
So you can contact my office, either my executive assistant Cameron, you can contact Kirsten, she maintains all of this information. We have a talent bank form, which if you're interested in getting involved, but maybe you don't see something that you're interested in right now, or you're just looking for the future, we can keep that on hand and have it if there are openings. And there's unfortunately there's a shortage of volunteers and participants in the local government, and we never have enough volunteers, we never have enough participants. So that's something that we really rely on, and I would encourage everyone to
And
check
it
out.
keeps you young.
It's a leadership program that all of you would be encouraged to join, to learn about the town and how it works.
When are the registrations? That's my book. When are those registrations?
For which?
Leadership Londonderry?
We're taking them through August at this point in time.
Okay, great.
Contact Cameron
Yeah,
for that.
great program.
Good luck.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Thank you feel free to reach out anytime, and stay cool on this hot evening.
So,
Thank you.
I don't know, thousands of dollars.